All right, welcome to this week's lesson with BGO. Got Dave here.
Chris here.
All right, we're doing a little bit of a different format, just because we wanted to talk about injuries and different things that you can do. If any of you are subscribed to the newsletter, you would have seen earlier this year that Chris and I both had got injured and were unable to play for a little bit. I'm still recovering. Exactly. And I think for this week's newsletter, I'm going to do a little bit more talking about the injury thing, just because it hit me, researching different things that, part of the guitar journey is learning all of the things and being excited to play your favorite song or learn how to solo and just get familiar with the instrument. But, as you stick with it and as you move forward into these new things, we have day lives too, like especially with some of my older students, right? You have work, you have kid responsibilities, like, you're probably going to get hurt eventually. So let's talk about different approaches, like what to do when that happens. And I should say just from the get-go that neither one of us are medical professionals. So if you have an injury, by all means talk to your doctor and figure out what's right for your situation. But we're just going to talk about our situations and what has worked for us. So Chris, why don't you walk through what happened to you? Was it February?
Oh yeah, probably early March, start of March.
Okay.
So, start of March, I burnt my thumb and just making food in the kitchen and grabbed a hot pot and my thumb just slipped over and just a 3rd-degree burn on my thumb here. And just recovering from that was painful because I'm resting my thumb often on the bottom string of a guitar while I'm playing. So playing with a bandaged up thumb, it just felt uncomfortable and it just hurt to flex it. I also couldn't shoot tutorial videos because I couldn't do close-ups of my right hand with a gigantic bandage on my thumb. So that was the big drag for BGO content and trying to, continue offering helpful advice for students in the online community is, just having this gigantic bandage around my thumb as that healed up. But I considered I got off lucky. I didn't lose my thumb. And more importantly, at least from a playing perspective, and this is a total acoustic guy talking, I didn't bust my thumbnail. That's important. So the thumbnail stayed intact for, picking classical and picking steel string acoustic and even picking on the electric a little bit. But it just was, kind of unwieldy and it hurt. But I think, one of the common injuries many guitarists have suffered over their life, and working professionals, especially in this day and age, is problems of the wrist, problems of the forearm, hands, things that are related to tendonitis and carpal tunnel. They're major issues for guitar players. And I thought it'd be fun to just open up here with a couple of the exercises that I go through before I play, before I practice every day too, and it doesn't matter what time of day you're practicing, you need to be attentive to doing some warm-ups. And these, again, I'm not a medical professional, but these are things that I found to be helpful. I haven't had a lot of playing related injuries in my life, thankfully. And not any major ones, to be honest. I've had a couple of bouts with, some wrist pain, but nothing that's full on carpal tunnel and nothing that's full on tendonitis. But before I, start practicing every day, before I get the guitar on me or in my lap, it's just practicing this idea of sitting tall and keeping my shoulders straight. And then just, it seems funny, but you're in your practice space and, it's all for you is just letting your arms hang down and just wobbling them back and forth and kind of just getting that blood flow to the fingertips and keeping everything loose and limber. And I'm not doing a lot of head rolls or anything like that, but it's all just kind of focused on arm and shoulder relaxation and just keeping my spine straight, thinking about how when I go to play and I'm bringing my hands up in a really relaxed way and, just that little bit of prep work kind of warms up the fingers and warms up the hands. And then there's different right hand and left hand warm-up ideas if you're finger picking, if you're playing classical guitar or fingerstyle acoustic, there's a whole myriad amount of right hand arpeggios you can do on the guitar to get your right hand warmed up. And then there's a whole lot of kind of silent left hand exercises you can do. And we've got videos on these things, but just warming up both the hands and then launching into your practice session. Mm-hmm. So, same way you wouldn't come out of 20-degree weather into the gym and just start bench pressing. You got to warm up a little bit.
Right.
And the amount
I would always tell my students, it's like, these are little muscles, right? I mean, so when you go to work out, you stretch your big ones. Like you should be thinking of, keeping everything, because it's all attached.
Yep. So we're micro athletes. As musicians, you really have to view yourself. You are a micro athlete. You're doing intense amount of focus on a small scale, but with a lot of intensity. So the intensity is no joke that it takes to play an instrument of any kind. It's micro athletics. So treat it as such.
There was, it was 10, 12 years ago. I think there was some study, and maybe I can dig it up. Otherwise it's a good anecdote and whatever. It's a good story. But there was some medical researcher that was like, let's take the stats of like a drummer, like a professional concert drummer. And so we got the readings of the heart rate and the whatever, and then went to basketball players and said like, hey, would you want to be a musician? Would you want to do that? And like, oh yeah, absolutely. And like, okay, well here, check out these. Here's what your day is. You have to, get up really early to get to the next show. You have to load in all of your stuff. You have to be there to do this, that, and the other. Then you have to play. And when you're playing, here's what your heart rate's doing. Here's what your body's doing. Here are all the, sort of medical stats. Then you have to break everything down and, you go to bed and maybe get like 5 hours of sleep. And these are the working conditions. There's smoke, there's light, there's heat, there's whatever. And when they were shown, those sort of health things, like, oh, no, I can't do that. There's no way I would put my body through that.
That's great. Huh.
So maybe I can dig that up.
Try to link that in the comments or something.
Yeah. I'll try to find that. But yeah, it's that story has always stuck with me in terms of that micro athlete idea, because it's true. Jumping around on a hot stage is no joke.
Nope. No, they've moved to LED lights and the stage isn't quite as hot as it used to be in the past. It's still work. So
I mean, you pack 200 people in any kind of space, it's going to warm up. Yep. But yeah, I think, for me, I was, I put my fist down on the ground in order to, transition from standing to laying, and my wrist gave out. And so my hand curled underneath and all my body weight landed right here. Oof. And, we went to the doc and they're like, good news, bad news. Good news, nothing's broken. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, bad news, sprains take longer to heal. It's like, So I think I'm 6 weeks in. Yeah. And just last night, I finally attempted to play a little. And I can tell you straight away that the dexterity is just gone. I'm going to have to build it back up. And especially with my middle fingers, there's something with that tendon that I'm just going to have to build up again. But, when it happened, and this was one of the reasons, to talk about it was, when you are faced with this, it doesn't mean that you just have to put down the guitar. You can choose to do that. We wouldn't recommend it because we like playing. But you can go and focus on other things as part of your practice routine, right? For me, because I don't do a lot of finger picking and I'm kind of chipping away at that thing, as I can, I started doing some finger independent, things based on videos that Chris has done for BGO. So I knew where to find him. And, started doing some of that stuff. But then I also went back to some more of the music theory things just to go into tonal stuff or, refamiliarize myself with modes, which, for somebody at the stage that, you and I are, that's definitely an option. But, for somebody who hasn't memorized, note positions, that might be something to work on. Right. or just committing to memory the scale formulas of, okay, a minor pentatonic is a 1 3 4 5, flat 7, um, and just having those in your head so that when you go to apply them elsewhere, you can easily grab those things. That's definitely valid practice in my book. I tell my private students that that is valid practice. So is exploring new music, right? That kind of music appreciation piece. Like if you've never listened to country, go listen to country. If you've never explored, reggaeton, spend a week with that and just see if any of that resonates with you, and analyze the drum parts or whatever else. So
yeah, I think that the universal thing I tell every student, no matter the age, is you cannot listen too much. You absolutely right. cannot listen to too much guitar music. It's not possible.
Right. Well, and there's just so much difference, like I've been getting into more of the regional, like world stuff over the last couple of years, just to see, okay, flamenco, what is that? I'm totally unfamiliar with that. How do I discover some of that? Do you go more traditional or do you go more with the synthy, new stuff? All of it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just the wide world of guitar styles out there, and the accessibility of being able to reach out to knowledgeable people through the internet and get recommendations on who next to listen to. And the algorithms in many of the music listening programs out there, doesn't matter what you're subscribing to or what you're using, what platform you're using, the algorithms keep getting better and better as far as recommending, pretty good quality suggestions for artists you have never heard of and haven't met and maybe never would have discovered otherwise, now that we don't have a record shop on the corner in every town for kids to kind of gather at and discover stuff. The internet and our phone apps are really the new frontier for music discovery. So, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but you cannot listen too much. You just can't. I think, as we're talking about injuries, the big things are we never injure everything all at once. It's pretty rare that somebody like breaks both their arms. It's pretty rare that somebody has, both legs broken. So what do you do when, you're just trying to get some bit of practice in when you're injured? And if your right hand's injured, you can think about doing left hand chord shapes. There's a lot of things you can do with a teacher to just simply work on what we call chord blocks. In guitar playing, there's the setup of playing notes individually and then also playing chord shapes all at once, which require multiple fingers moving together and kind of landing at the same time. And if you're injured in your right hand, this is a great chance to, just practice doing some of those chord blocks and work on some theory like you were talking about, with the assistance of a teacher. You can start exploring these movable shapes. Guitar is such a geometric instrument. I always tell people that, when you're connecting with the fretboard, you're really thinking in shapes. As you play fast and at a virtuosic speed, you're not thinking, oh, I'm playing a G, a D, and a B. You're just thinking of this 1-2 shape that kind of looks like a little off-centered triangle, And then when we go to this, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm playing a G, E, and a C. I'm thinking I'm playing this kind of L shape. My brain and my hands are really thinking geometrically. And if you're injured in your right hand, it's a great chance to just practice going back and forth between some of these shapes and understanding how those are connected on the guitar as you have the time to focus on it while you're waiting for your right hand to recover. And likewise, if your left hand is injured, your right hand has just a number of things it can do as far as arpeggios, planted arpeggios, different rolls. There's a lot of things you can do just with the right hand dexterity wise, if you're picking with your fingers, and if you're picking with a plectrum, you can tune the guitar to an open tuning. I should have thought ahead and tuned this to like an open G or an open D or something. But, then it sounds like music and you're just working on, intricate picking patterns. And you can also play any electric guitar solo. This is a big thing in the classical world. We talk about playing an entire piece with just our right hand. We're not injured, but we'll study a score and we'll play the entire piece just with the right hand. And there's left-hand notes that, create a more musical interest and variety there. But being able to work through a piece, and even if that's all you do over your injury period is just one piece and really getting the right hand down, I promise you're never going to forget that piece. That's going to suddenly become, a lifer piece for you. You're going to remember the fingerings for that piece more concretely than a lot of the other pieces that you play by just jumping into hands together. So that division of hand work, is something worth pursuing even when you're not injured. But if you are injured, it can be a real great chance to connect with a skill set that's going to serve you outside of the injury as well. So that's the silver lining, even though no one likes pain, no one wants to be injured, but at least go with that.
Right. Yeah. And I think the one thing to shout out too is I didn't, when I was younger, I definitely poo-pooed the whole ergonomic discussion. Sort of, you're a teenager and you think you're invincible. But there was a period in college when, I had piano classes and guitar classes and then, writing and staying up and doing all these things where my posture was bad enough that my shoulder got locked up and it affected all the muscles down to this hand. I couldn't use this hand. I could balance a cup of coffee on my palm and that was it. And it was because the shoulder muscles were so tight that it was affecting everything else. So after that, to your point, keeping your shoulders square and relaxed, especially now when, almost everybody has some sort of job with a computer, making sure that your posture throughout the day is good, can really go a long way in preventing, a lot of these overuse injuries. Because, to your point, I've been lucky enough not to have the carpal tunnel or any of the tendonitis stuff. It's all just been bumps and bruises and, that kind of stuff. So,
the more you do, to segue into that point about ergonomics and bullet that with the issues of body awareness and strength training too, that really get overlooked. And a little bit of resistance training in your life will go a long way in preventing injury. A lot of our injuries are overuse and misuse injuries. And if you're doing some physical activity exercises in a healthy way, and preferably with the guidance of a qualified coach, resistance training can help you play longer and healthier, into your golden years too. One of the best things I ever did was start doing some personal training work with a personal trainer who really understood what an artist needs, that I was going for strength and endurance over just simply bulking up and just training me appropriately to build some just general body strength that has translated into being able to practice longer and without fatigue and pain for many more years than I thought. And a lot of people, when they dive into music, especially if they're pursuing a degree or taking it to a high level, all we're doing is music. And then we're not thinking about the holistic need of our body to exercise, to move. Your body is meant to move. And even though parts of your body are moving while you're playing an instrument, we need to get our whole bodies moving and keep ourselves healthy. So that kind of overall fitness plug, we're not going to dwell on it and be like, go exercise and do this, this, and this. You got to figure out how you enjoy moving, but just get your body moving and keep it healthy.
Well, to that point, I do think, at least my experience through playing live and jamming with other people and, doing performances, the only musicians that actually think holistically, I think, again, broad brushes here, are singers, just because they are the instrument, right? You can't really have, greasy burgers and half a pack of cigarettes a day if you're going to be a legit singer. There are some who just have freakish genetics, but, for the rest of us, you have what you earn, right? Yeah. So I don't know, something to think about.
One
Um,
there's a system of study in the music world, particularly the classical music world and the performing arts world of theater, and it's a method called the Alexander technique. And I'm not a certified Alexander teacher, but I've done Alexander lessons. And Alexander was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, uh, century before, and he lost his voice while trying to give a performance of a Shakespeare work. He just completely lost his voice, and he realized he was kind of cranking his neck and bending his spine in a way that over time, trying to project his voice with this, what he calls misuse, he lost his voice, and he needed to retrain his body to be more relaxed and be aware of what it was doing. And then he got his voice back, and he developed this method of body awareness. And I love that term because it just really sticks, that body awareness. Once you start thinking about these things, that habit of thinking about them builds. And feel your toes in your shoes right now, or feel your toes on the ground. Suddenly you're feeling your toes, right? You weren't 30 seconds ago even paying attention to that. And our daily existence is filled with that. We sit with our legs crossed, which is horrible for our legs and our hips and our spine, yet it can become comfortable. And this idea of, as we've grown through life since being children, we misuse our bodies and it becomes comfortable. The slouching for many people feels so comfortable that when they have to sit in a more erect position here with the spine straight, it's uncomfortable, and they start slowly moving back towards that slouching position. And that's what we would call misuse. And you don't have to necessarily go and get Alexander lessons, though it's really beneficial if you're a performing professional or, in an upper level of playing. But just that idea of paying attention to your ergonomics and your posture is huge and will pay dividends for years. It's that kind of principle of just saving a little bit adds up, and a little bit of attention to this adds up as you go.
well, and what's interesting is like a lot of the metal guys that I like to listen to they're really big into weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
Like guys like Petrucci, Zach Wild. But then you also have, I think the lead singer, Matt Heafy of Trivium. He's super into mixed martial arts. And so he does that kind of training just to stay limber with his singing and his guitar playing and whatever else. And to your point, find what you like to do, right? For whatever your movement is.
It can be walking. It can just be walking. It can be cycling, paddling.
So yeah, I guess, with this one, we just wanted to make sure that, we call it out because it is part of the journey, right? It's not just, sunflowers and sunshine with, playing guitar, right? I mean, there are ups and downs for sure.
I will say, one of my big things I get on is this body-centered position of holding the guitar. And I have no problem just saying it outright. I think, the ideas of holding your guitar on your right leg like this with the neck relatively, horizontal and parallel to the floor are terrible. It's just terrible ergonomics. And, it can look cool, but it's awful for your body. It's awful for so many things going on. And I have no problem being completely in the camp that says it's just not acceptable for long-term playing. You will have an injury, and what you need to do is strap up. You need to get that guitar in a heart-centered position here. And we got a whole posture video on it. But classical guitar players, we center ourselves like this from the beginning, which encourages the straight back and ergonomic hold of the instrument. When you're playing an electric guitar, it's going to happen the same way. These things are so heavy that if you're not playing with a strap, they're going to weigh you down. I mean, just everything about me is contorted in this position. It's out of the view here, but on my right leg, if I have the strap and can center it, my arms are free, my shoulders are straight, the guitar's in a really nicely centered position. My left hand is free to float up through the entire neck. I had a friend and colleague who he injured himself by falling off his roof, and he just shattered his arm, and his right arm was stuck like this. And he had previously played, off of his right leg, and he was a really competent player and, excellent guitar player. And just watching me play using a footstool as a classical guitarist, which I don't always use for lower back reasons, but with many beginners, we use a footstool, and that's in our posture video too. But you set it up under one foot, and he was able to put his electric guitar in this kind of centered position while sitting, and his cast could just fit right over the guitar, and then he could practice. But there was no way with his broken arm he could get his arm back over to where it was comfortable, body misuse again, comfortable over here and playing. So, I mean, this was just impossible for him for the duration of his broken arm. And by switching to this centered position, he later felt more relaxed and was able to play through that injury, with his arm in a cast, and still just use a plectrum and play. So there's always an option, and you can seek out a guitar teacher and their advice for how to approach your injury and still get some stuff done. You can still make some progress in your musical journey despite your injury, whatever it might be. So, and even
I know one of the things for me, during the 6-week piece was I had been toying around with, some tone ideas, right? Like what's my setup going to be? That's been a path I've been, kind of seriously on for the last couple of years. So I started experimenting with wet, dry, wet, for the delay sounds and stuff. And because all of that stuff, learning what pedals you like, learning what amps you like, all of that takes time. And so if you can't play, you could definitely hit an open string and hear how it comes through the system. And that, fine tune things, that way. So there's, a lot of different options, right? Just because you are injured for a little bit doesn't mean you have to stop the journey at all, right? You just chase, some other thing that you're interested in. So thank you all for listening, for watching. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube. Massive thank you to anybody who's checked out our Patreon page or signed up for the Woodshed newsletter. We'll put links below in the description. So by all means, ask any questions, right? I think earlier we shot a student question video. We have a lot of fun with those, so please send any of your questions in so that we can do that. And we will see you next week with a new lesson. So take care.
Excellent.